Hey everybody, Master Toby Milroy here again, publisher for Martial Arts World News Magazine and frequent host for Martial Arts Business Innovations, the show we're watching today. And I'd like to ask you a personal favor if you wouldn't mind. If you wouldn't mind, please help us spread the word, right? Help us help more people in the martial arts industry, help more school operators and more instructors teach better classes, grow their business, build their brands, build their reach into their community by helping us share and like and subscribe and hit the notification bell on this video, right? It really sort of helps goose the Facebook algorithm or the YouTube algorithm and helps more people like you discover this content, discover our videos, and discover the type of content that we provide. So thanks so much. I really appreciate that. So hit like and subscribe and hit that little notification bell. And I'd love to see you. I'd be happy to see you and excited to see you at an upcoming live event. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Speak soon.
Welcome to Martial Arts Industry Innovations, presented by Martial Arts World News Magazine. Here, you'll get the latest news and information about the martial arts industry and discover the latest tools, tactics, innovations, business systems, teaching strategies, and much more to help you grow your school, career, or martial arts business. You'll also hear from some of the most successful school owners, innovators, instructors, industry influencers, and thought leaders in the world, sharing proven strategies and solutions to take your martial arts school or business to new heights. Join our mission at Martial Arts World News Magazine to raise the standards of martial arts business professionalism throughout the world.
Welcome, everybody. Master Toby Milroy here again, publisher and CEO for Martial Arts World News Magazine. And today joining us once again is our very good friend, Grandmaster Tom Patire, fresh off the airplane, ready to help us talk a little bit about and digest a little bit about some of the recent, violence that we're seeing and some things like that. But if you don't know Grandmaster Patire, there's all sorts of information about him on our Martial Arts World News website. He's one of our columnists and contributors, and he's always been sort of a really valuable and important asset in the martial arts community, especially in the areas of his personal expertise in personal protection. So thank you, sir, once again for joining us. We really appreciate your time. Right?
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You've been super helpful for everything we've done here. So we super appreciate it. Let's talk a little bit about, we talked last time, I think, when the attempted assassination of President Trump at a political rally right before the election. And, unfortunately, we're here kind of again, right? A couple of weeks past Charlie Kirk's sort of tragic shooting and assassination, essentially, at another, political event on a college campus. Turns out Charlie a little, right? I'd love to hear a little bit about that relationship and how you guys met and, what your sort of role was there and what your take of the whole situation there might be.
First of all, condolences go out to Charlie and his family. I mean, what happened is a sin. A few years ago, I was speaking at a college on safety. There was an incident where somebody was killed on a college campus. And this is a major school. They brought me in because I had a heart-to-heart talk with all the student heads on what happens, why it happens, who's at fault, who's not at fault, and all. And there were different people in the room. I didn't know who they were. So after I was done, a young man, about 26, 27 years old, comes up to me, introduces himself. It's Charlie Kirk. And we start talking, and he asked me about, my thoughts on safety. Where did I see this point? He didn't understand that, this, that. And we started talking. I asked him about him, and, he was very straightforward, very religious, talked about Turning Point, things like that. So we went and had lunch. And lo and behold, on the way home, we're sitting next to each other, all right, on a plane. So is that fate or whatever?
Right.
So we exchange a lot in the last couple of years, talked several times. He bounced a couple of things off of me about how do you look, make certain manpower that you would have look like more of other manpower, because he was just getting into the point where he was making a difference and he was receiving some threats. All right. Now his team, where everybody's knocking him, I will not. They're an exceptional, talented team. But what people don't understand is their limited manpower. So take that acreage, take the way the layout was. They're not Secret Service, they're not federal government. Most colleges don't even allow you to carry weapons. So how do you make 5 people look like 50 people? Where I think it could have been enhanced is if the college security would have helped them, and they did inside the perimeter, but they did not do on the buildings.
Right.
Now, in fairness, Utah and Utah State in the Utah area is not known for active shooter mentality. So this kid, whoever, possessed him to do this, whoever coaxed him to do this, he didn't come up with this on his own, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Knew that there'd be an open shot to this, and I believe that he was lucky in hitting a vital zone like that on a first shot at that distance with a weapon that was many years old. And unless he scoped it in, I would say this, it was a headshot that dropped. And that's why he caught into the artery. I don't believe it was a neck shot. But anyway, so I went to the event. I gave my condolences to his wife and family. But it was heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to see such a young soul. I don't care about what people think, what they like, what they didn't like.
Yeah.
Here's a guy that brought fact over fiction. If you ever listen to him, he got to the younger people that nobody else gets to. When I speak at colleges, they buy into who I am because I'll listen to their reason. I'll listen to their stories about growing up on the streets or their sister being killed in a gang or whatever. And then I'll counter it with things that they could adhere to, that they could believe in. No fantasy, no fiction. And believe me, I'm not selling martial arts. I'm selling empowerment, So, it hits home. Several months prior to that, as you know, I began writing a series on active shooter because it's more prevalent for a lot of different reasons that we could discuss. And unknown to me is here we are going to be talking about somebody that I knew that experienced the life-altering phase of an active shooter.
Yeah. Do you have, it's a tragedy, again, either side of the political spectrum you find yourself on or anywhere in the middle. Hopefully we've all been able to agree that this is just intolerable, right? This is not a way for us to, express our political disagreements. I don't think we have everybody on board with that yet, but I'd like to get there. I'd like to help try to get there in some ways. Do you have any sense, this isn't an area necessarily that we need to explore, but, how do you feel about, you said that they were kind of blaming the protection detail, and that's probably a misappropriation of angst, I guess, or anger. How do you feel that this was accomplished? Do you think that there was some coordination here that we may not know about, or do you have any insight into what it would take to pull this off that might be thought, we might want to be thinking about?
Yeah. So I learned a lot when I went to Arizona. And what I did learn is that they were given limited people to help them. That the way it was set up very early, if not a day before that early morning. And it was wide open for anybody to come in. You need tickets, things like that.
Yeah.
So anybody could walk it and know it, I believe that this kid knew the campus. I believe that he came there hoping to find the right place. And when he got on the roof and got into position, he was obsessed. Why do people do this? They say for ideology. No, they want to die famous. This kid's a nobody. He's a halfwit if you really look into him. And I'll say that to anyone. All right. He's not all there. And nobody will ever know who he is.
Yeah.
Now everybody knows who he is.
Yeah. 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 There's a aphorism, I guess, or something like that about, one Marine with one gun and a will, right? And it's a very difficult thing to stop. If somebody really has the will, it's a really, really tough thing to, proof yourself against, I guess. Interesting. So you were describing that the prevalence of active shooters seems to be on the rise. What are your thoughts on that? What's your analysis of that?
Well, we only see the high-profile active shooters.
Right.
And there's probably 40 to 50 of them that happen a week, People don't even know that. Now, active shooter, not to that level. People catching somebody walking to school with a gun, or somebody being pulled over going to a destination, but it's the headlines that make it. Is there any way to stop it? My son and I had this discussion, and I said, Tommy, it costs too much money. Let's take the college, all right, where Mr. Kirk spoke. To make that a protective veil, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. And he also, which is fairness to the protective team, wanted them to be off of him because he didn't want to let them be a threat to the kids, and that's why they're not on him.
Yeah.
All right. People say, oh, well, if we did this, we would have, had a condensed diamond. Well, if you have a diamond, you can't see him either way. And yeah, would it have blocked a shot? Probably. But that's not how you speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't bring a fear factor into an empowerment talk, So yes, it's happening more. Mostly right now, it's religious organizations and it's key figures. I will tell you this, that speaking engagements have changed from now on. They may do, the whole aspect of limit the people in an area like an auditorium, make sure everybody's screened, high police presence, things like that. This open forum's done. It's done.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had clients that were going to do events at certain big things, and their fear factor was through the roof. They're like, Tom, just get the who's who. We'll speak in here. You guys make sure nobody's got weapons. So.
Yeah. In fact, I think just like a couple of days after there was another event that they'd already planned for the president that they moved indoors because it was like, there's no way, they're not letting this guy get outside for right now, interesting enough. So from your perspective, and kind of taking into context the Kirk assassination, how do you think that this has impacted the conversation around personal safety, active shooter, these types of things in America? And obviously, especially as we look at martial arts schools, I mean, we'll get there, but how do you think that's modified the conversation? What do you think people are thinking about, talking about? What's the general consensus or the general mood right now, the thinking about this type of thing?
Well, I'd like to take our brothers and sisters in the martial arts. A lot of them call me, will ask me things. And, Tob, I'm at an age where I'm not holding no secrets. I'll tell them. If I could help them, I will. I said, the first thing we all have to understand that anybody can kill anyone at any given time if they have one factor. And they're like a weapon. I go, no, if they're willing to die.
Yeah.
Because if you're willing to die, and you know this from the military, I mean, if you're willing to die, you have no fear factor. In fact, if you want to die, you're looking forward to it. So once you pull the trigger, it goes. So the thought of scaring them is not what happens. The thought of them getting caught is why they stop. And that's the majority of active shooters. So when I talk to schools, I'm like, look, you have to understand that the more eyes on looking the other way is the more eyes on protection. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, well, I always tell people I have the best seat in the house when I bodyguard, looking the other way.
Right.
So if you're at a church function and there's music going on and there's crowd and this, that, and the other, and you have an 8-man team, well, 4 are inside the funnel and 4 are outside. Eyes out, eyes in. That's how you protect. I said, but if you're an open forum where there's buildings all around and all, I said, there's nothing you could do about it. So you're going to have to condense the area. And the biggest thing now is everybody's going long range. It used to be pistol, handgun. Now they're going long gun. So the dynamics, and here's the worst statistic, that the majority are successful.
Yeah, right.
So if they're successful, I mean, whoever, look into the case of our president, look in the case at, Mr. Kirk, successful. And those 2 dopes will die famously, the shooters, because nobody knew who either one of them were.
Yeah. The situation at the church, these scenarios where largely soft targets, sometimes very little protection, if anything. It's pretty rough to think that you're going to be able. You can't secure a facility. Come on, it's insane. It's too big of a job. So what do you think about? Okay, so let's look inside the martial arts community a little bit. And obviously we have kind of a couple of markets, and they are a little different. Even in a TMA and like a traditional martial arts school, we still sort of have like the adult market and like the kids market, right? And then more macro, we have sort of the more hardcore self-defense, jujitsu type, Krav type, types. And then you have the more traditional, I don't know, Kyokushin or Tong Sudo guys, right? So what do you think that martial arts school operators, instructors should be talking to parents about right now? What do you think that dialogue should be like? The value of real world training versus just the sport or the art of martial arts?
Okay, so let's start with the younger group. They're sponges. And I know that they look up to their instructor, this sensei, this abinamu as above God.
Yeah,
We know.
yeah.
What I don't agree with, which I've seen on Facebook and all, where they're teaching kids at 10 or 12 how to bum rush a shooter. You got to be out of your mind to teach that. I mean, are you willing? People say, well, you'll overwhelm them. One or two will get hurt. No, one or two will get killed, if not more. So I don't agree with that. They have to, bring in a pro, and the pro has to talk to the parents, not recycled shit that they get off of, recycled stuff that they get off of the internet. Get somebody who knows weapons. Get somebody that knows the truth about this. Movement, cover, what's the difference between cover and concealment? Why do you change your body when you run? Because you change your organs, so your vitals are less. Like things that nobody's doing. So you got to update the parents, and they got to buy into it first before you start talking to the kids.
Yeah.
Now, teenagers, they're the ones that I could do this. I'm a so-and-so black belt, or I'm a this and that. Positive, confident, stupid.
Yeah.
Because they don't understand how fast a bullet goes. One of the things I bring at my talks is I have, and this for ballistics, a pumpkin or a bottle of water. And I show them how quick, at what distances they could get destroyed, which is the same thing as your body. All right. But I also teach on how quick a weapon system jams.
Mm-hmm.
Not for them to do it, that people, again, parents would understand it, because they don't understand mentality. And teenagers want to go to the next level as a hero. Now you get into the 20-year-olds plus. They're more likely to be like, okay, so who am I with and how do I get out of here? It's the seasoned people, whether they be law enforcement, military, high-level martial arts, personal safety, executive protection, that may make a calculated move if the cover is there to get at the shooter. But with all the new gun laws, I mean, the last couple of shooters incidents that haven't been advertised, they've been gotten by citizens who drew their gun.
Yeah.
And killed them.
Yeah. Do you know? Let me pause for just a second there, if you don't mind. Do you happen to know off the top of your head the statistic? I don't remember off the top of my head, but I just redid my concealed carry permit a year ago, 2 years ago, something like that. It accidentally expired on me, and I believe the statistic was something like this, something like 80% of all active shooters only stop with the presence of a second gun, right? Somebody shows up with another gun, right? Either law enforcement or a citizen or whatever the case might be. And the other 18% or whatever were weird scenarios, like they run out of ammunition or they eat a bullet or something like that, right? They shoot themselves. Does that sound right to you, or does that sound
well? It's the statistic works on they either get cornered and they drop their weapon, or they get blindsided and get hit.
Yeah.
With someone else's. But if they're coming, like there was an incident in the school district, they came around the bend, SWAT was there, all decked out, boom, lasers are on the face. They're like, hell with this.
Yeah.
The others is, there's been another incident, school, they come in there and the guy goes like this, ends himself.
Yeah.
So if I'm this kid that took out Charlie, he's got to understand, and he's feeling it now, what his life is going to be like, isolated. And he's only 20 something years old. Yeah. Now, of course, they're going to try to rush him to, the whether it be firing squad or whatever. I don't think it's going to happen soon, but somewhere, unless he's mentally disturbed, he's got to be saying, what am I doing? Get 15 minutes twice a week for exercise. The rest he's in a 10 by 8 or 10 by 10. So
yeah, it doesn't seem like it's a shock he ever got off the roof and, got away. But did he expect to do that? I don't know. I don't know.
I from what I know, different things than what other people know, he knew that the distance he was in,
Mm-hmm.
the kids would go crazy, chaos, controlled chaos, it's called, and that they weren't going to look to the roofs. They were going to look to who got shot.
In the crowd. Yeah, sure. Yeah. No, it makes sense. Yeah.
But him getting as far away as he did was crazy.
As I started working with Harry and Friends, boy, my complete 180, much better than I could deliver just by myself. Much better content.
Well, Harry is a godsend. Harry is like a virtual staff member.
The kids are just more excited. When it's time to do the mat chat, a lot of times it used to be verbal, but now we have the visual.
Right.
And they can relate to this guy.
We have been a long-time Harry and Friends customer with our little ninjas going on, we think, around 10 years now.
How many schools do you guys have that are using Harry and Friends? 5 schools. Excellent. And how do the kids react? How do the parents react?
Harry is a big part of our We Warriors program. Kids love him. They will do things that he says that won't do if we tell them to, and they definitely won't do it if their parents tell them to. Makes the parents a little jealous, but they love him too. Check it out, guys. You got to do Harry and Friends.
Okay, everybody. Where is Harry today? Miss Grace at Martial Arts.
You never have to be at a loss for marketing, management, and instruction strategies that will attract more prospects, enroll more students, and bring you more income. Get an overflowing and continuous fountain of business resources with Martial Arts Business Academy.
Stay informed while on the go with daily news in the Martial Arts World News Magazine mobile app for Apple and Android devices. Find us in your app store. And now, back to our show.
Something that you mentioned before, I think it's super useful. So I really like the idea that you're drawing a clear distinction between dealing with adults and parents and things like that than you are with the kids. And I think the balance that school operators, especially in the family martial arts market, are really trying to walk right now is how do I give some skills, or how do I give at least some awareness to both groups of my student body without creating panic, without creating fear, without creating, the type of anxiety. My daughter, we have her in a really awesome high school that we're super happy with. It's super safe. We love it. Right. One of her friends went to the other, high school that we didn't want her to go to. And it just so happens a girl that they both know set the bathroom on fire, lit the toilet paper and set the bathroom on fire. And then the rumor around the school was she also had a gun in her bag. Well, we know that that's not true, but that's still the rumor. That's what's in their head, right? They're thinking about these things now. Tom, when I was in high school, you could have went into the parking lot of my high school and found 35 rifles and 20 shotguns in the truck hanging on the gun rack at the back. I'm from Iowa, brother. Half of my high school class would go hunting with their parents after school on a given week, right? But we never in a million years would have even been thinking about somebody bringing a gun into the school or whatever the case is. So anyway, I guess my sort of question and premise I'm interested to know your perspective on is, in the wake of sort of some of these violent activities and stuff, knowing that there's these two different markets that we kind of have to satisfy, what kind of recommendations would you have on how to approach the topic without it being fearful and anxiety ridden and sort of, or perhaps looking like you're taking advantage of a tragedy?
Well, first of all, and this is the hardest part of martial arts school owners, they have to understand that even though this has a variable of self-defense, it's not their expertise.
Right.
And they're going to go speak and you'll have law enforcement in maybe in the audience or military and all that, and they're going to shred holes on who they are. So you book a speaker, and he's not white noise. You bring in somebody that knows what they're talking about. It's a different variable, and you do it under, hey, listen, I care about our school. So when people fly me in to do things, I tell them, look, don't put the spotlight on me. Put the spotlight. You're doing this because you care about your people. That's why you're bringing me in to do the talk. And whoever talks, like, I don't sell anything when I talk. I go through it. I answer their questions. And there's things a school can do to enhance what I tell, like certain drills of movement and things like that, which I show the instructors. But if you are an expert in carjacking, you're an expert in active shooter, you're an expert in home burglary, sooner or later people are like, it just doesn't go. And then you get the backwards effect where the law enforcement groups or security groups or military groups put the negative on the street, like, who is Mr. So-and-so teaching this when he's a so-and-so black belt? So I think we have to come to the aspect of, it's okay to pass the ball when it's out of your expertise, as long as who you bring in passes the ball back and enhances what you are. And I don't think we've learned that. And me and the ego is incredible, in the martial. I thought the ego was bad in the people I protect because of good. But martial arts is a close second. Yeah. And I watch these videos all the time about teaching people self-defense, hit him here, do this, do that. Look, you have no adults watching that. You got kids streamlining that are, probably 12 to 16, 12 to 18 watching that stuff. And they're forgetting one thing, that if the guy that they're going against is seasoned of violence and you hit him wrong, you got a long day on your hands, because he will become situational nasty and he will take it to you. I'll tell you a story that's true. My friend's son wanted to fight. He wanted to be a UFC fighter. So he trains at this school, 17 years old, turns 18, tatted himself all up. Wants to be UFC, UFC.
Yeah, UFC guy, yeah. Fit right in.
Friend says, come on, he's fighting in Atlantic City. The first 32 seconds was the longest 32 seconds of his life, and the guy destroyed him. Him. You know what he's doing now? He's lasering off his tattoos. So, my friend said, I feel horrible. I said, you should feel good. He got a lesson in a controlled environment that's going to make him a better person. Imagine if it was out there. If he messed with one of these gangs, he wouldn't come home. So I think if we can, and I don't know if we can or can't, if we can understand that this is serious, and somewhere one of the kids, teenagers or parents in those schools are going to run across an active shooter, can you empower them to live? Not engage. That's totally different.
Yeah. Interesting, right? Is that the common, lexicon, right? Like, now we're certainly seeing programs available for like elementary school teachers and high school teachers and things like that on barricading and hiding and these steps that they're trying to implement to, reduce the risk in an active situation, active shooter situation. Don't miss the step, right? The first step is don't be the guy in front of the gun, right? Right. I mean, like, Jesus Christ, like, how can you, the more that can survive this thing, the better. So when it applies to, like, for example, you talk a lot about reaching out into the community and helping support, like you said, churches and youth groups and things like this. Are there approaches there that you've seen to be more effective than less? And what would your advice be on those types of scenarios?
What I'm seeing now, which I haven't seen in many years, is churches are calling and they're asking, can you teach and train a response team? And the response team is selection of people that have backgrounds, usually martial arts, military. Law enforcement's not on the response team because they believe they're the reactive force. So they're taking, their own people and they're putting them in key things. I just trained a church right here in New Jersey on key figures. And it's, as I said before, it's not normal for you to be looking that way when people are talking this way. So it takes a third eye mentality. But I told them, if you take the last 5 shooting events that happened in churches, they either got them through the outside windows before they entered or came out of the front door, or when they were like at recess, which means 2 years ago they were going inside.
Yeah.
Now they're catching them outside. So there has to be, eyes on, as I call it, a mentality of picking them up. I mean, come on, it's a summer day. The guy's got a long coat on. Doesn't belong. This guy put his weapon on the Charlie Kirk thing in his right leg and limped a couple of miles. He's got a backpack. He's limping. He's sweating. I mean, come on. Things don't fit,
Right.
So we don't challenge things, and maybe we shouldn't. Depends who you are, but we got to be eyes on more, and that's the only thing. Readability, and these schools are going high tech with the suicide door, coming in locked, bulletproof, but that's tens of thousands of dollars. It still has all the open windows. People say, well, an active shooter, you put this color out there so police know. Who's going to put the color out
who's
there?
going to do that? Yeah.
I mean, and look at the trauma those college kids are suffering. I mean, especially the first 12, 15 rows to see that. I mean, I don't want to say this, and I hate to say it, but he was dead on impact.
Oh,
and to hit that artery, you saw mass blood. I mean, come on. I don't care who you are. Never mind his family living with that. But those kids you're going to see. And that's another thing the college now has to worry about. Massive lawsuits.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Security, how come you have this? How about the drop in enrollment? So.
Yeah, well, and that video's out there now. I mean, like, his kids are probably going to see that video at some point. I mean, that's just like the multiplicative effect of the anxiety and the fear and all of this stuff, just because of how fast these, videos get around and the message gets out to the market and the community is just unbelievable. So you're saying that churches obviously are a center of focus. People are, they're worried about this kind of thing. You were describing earlier that you've been working with even, senior centers and, retirement communities, things like this, places where maybe it's not first order. What's your analysis of that? Where do you think the opportunity lies there?
Okay. So first of all, let's talk active shooter. How do you make the headlines? You hit a famous somebody. How do you break people's heart? You go after kids.
Right.
Okay. Now go to seniors. Unfortunately, seniors are not going to have that. If they hit a senior center and they hit a K-5 school, K-5 school gets the headlines. So in senior centers, they don't have a lot of money, these 65 and old or whatever. What is they going to get? So the biggest thing they have to worry more about is these online scams and, going places being pickpocketed. But active shooter in senior centers, it's not the norm because it's not the headlines people want.
Right.
Remember, they have, people say active shooters are psychos and all, but they have a plan. And that plan is, how do I get the headlines and be remembered the rest of my life? And that's what they do. That's what this kid did after the president. That's what this guy did after Charlie Kirk. There's going to be more. They're going to come after them, and the political stuff doesn't help. I'm not saying who's right or wrong, but one's fueling the other's pointing fingers at this one, and then bringing their backgrounds on, whether he's Republican or Democrat, he's a psycho.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And that's the unrest I worry about. I was recently contacted by a group to speak, and they asked me my political affiliation. And I said, first of all, you do not have the right to ask me.
None of your damn business. Yeah.
I said, I'm not coming to talk about who you should vote for. I'm coming to talk about how you should survive. If that's not good enough, get another speaker. So it's crazy what's going on.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd see the day, but.
Yeah. The degree of toxicity is certainly pretty high. I mean, there certainly are, all sorts of colorful stories about political divides in the past, and, the Lincoln Douglas debates and hiring thugs to come in and beat up the crowd at the rallies and stuff like that. I mean, like, we, have all seen it, but this seems to be at a level, it feels like a bit of a boiling point, frankly. It feels like a point where it really feels like there's something else coming. It really feels like there's some energy out there that really is toxic for the society. This is not what we're talking about today, but I just think, it just doesn't feel good to me. It feels like
I'm
there's
going to give you an
something
example. So I speak at this place. All right, it's a religious organization. 22-year-old raises his hand. This is 4 days after the shooting, and says, I heard that, the shooter was with the so-and-so group, and that they flew a special jet in there on a private runway, and that he went there and he got on the jet and he was gone. And I looked at him, I go, what is your educational background? He says, I was this, I'm going to be an engineer. And, in fact, I graduated, I got a good job. I said, you're an intelligent guy, right? I said, so the group you talked about flying the jet in is an ally to our country. That don't make sense.
Right.
You're sitting and waiting for him 18 hours. That don't make sense. He gets on the jet, flies there, and then they welcome him. They're going to protect him. That doesn't make sense. Where do you get this from? Well, I read it on a chat room.
Yeah.
So the other one was the bulletproof vest theory. Hit him here, poked up, hit him here. Well, did anybody check if he had a vest on or not?
Yeah. Did you see a vest? I didn't see a vest. Did you see a vest? I didn't see a vest. Yeah.
So the first thing we have to do is clarification. Like, disinformation will poison the young mind, because an intelligent guy, a guy with backgrounds like you and me, will read this stuff. And my son brings me this stuff. I go, get out of here with this.
Yeah.
But I think, and I believe, I don't know how to get there. I don't. And maybe you have the answer. But how do we get the martial art community to understand when to pass that ball?
Yeah.
And when to get it back?
Yeah, that actually that I have this underlined on my little list here. We both lament and complain and argue about the I don't know. I guess let's call him Weekend Warrior. But I go to a Carlos Machado jiu-jitsu seminar on a long weekend. Which, by the way, Carlos is amazing. Carlos is fantastic.
Yes.
Carlos can teach you more in 2.5 days than you're probably going to learn in a year or two. Right?
He's
To
very
be sure.
grounded.
Very, very, very sophisticated, gentleman. And yeah, you're going to learn a lot, but it doesn't mean you're going to go back and you're now like the jiu-jitsu master. Right. And I think we see that an awful lot in unfortunately, I know you see it an awful lot inappropriately in your spheres, where I do a weekend certification on insert name here, right? Insert brand name here. And now all of a sudden I think that, I'm qualified to go teach people how to, secure their facility or something like this. Right. I mean, we're talking about, when I'm a martial arts school, but I am perhaps interested or looking into how do I augment my curriculum or my program with some more personal protection elements and things like that. How would you recommend I go about that? Like what do I avoid? How do I focus on that?
Well, there's a big thing about personal protection versus personal preservation, and people don't understand the difference. All right, personal preservation, you're doing anything, everything to stay alive. Okay, this has to live. All bets are off. Personal protection is protecting you. It's protecting your loved ones. It's protecting your assets. It's doing things that are not above the use of force or confrontational avoidance. I know people hate when I say this, but people ask me my best skill, confrontational avoidance. I read it, I see it, I avoid it. That's what I'm trained to. I go, when it's time to engage, that's not a positive. That's a negative and a negative. Now, the only positive is to come out of it. So if you see it and you hear it, why are you engaging it? So I think, we have to train the senses more, what I call safety sense. Get the brain going, let the instructors say, listen, there is a time when you should walk. There is a time when you don't talk. All right, just walk away. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But the other thing, and again, this disturbs me when I watch these things. I saw a video the other day where an instructor that we all know is teaching while you're going through a crowd, they're in your way, you push them out like this, both of them. That's friggin' assault. You push. If I'm walking with one of my guys and I'm with my son and you push both of us, you got a nightmare coming down. Who are you to put your hands on us? And and that's how you get out of it. So we got to watch what we filter out there. And there's some people we're not going to change. It's a mentality of, I'd rather be, tried by 12 than carried by 6. And they're taking young people. Like, look, I think Krav Maga has a good essence to its system.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of other combative systems do. But you can't make an 18-year-old kid that just came out of a docile world a special ops guy.
Right.
You can't.
Right.
The military does that, So though you may be a military trainer, you still can't make them.
Hey son, let's do something different this weekend. How about we take in a museum?
Yeah, that sounds good.
We could learn about the samurai. Yeah! Or how about the Hawaiian Lua warriors? Ooh, the mighty sumo! Hey, how about the Martial Arts History Museum? That way we can learn about them all.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Do you feel like you're getting crushed under the tremendous weight of managing your martial arts school? Crawl out from beneath the burden and reach your potential. Lighten the load and let Atlas Martial Arts Software do the heavy lifting. Visit tryatlassoftware.com to see for yourself and get 7 free gifts valued at over $400.
Stay informed while on the go with daily news in the Martial Arts World News Magazine mobile app for Apple and Android devices. Find us in your app store. And now, back to our show.
Real good friend of mine's a spec ops guy for 20 something years now. And I remember we had this conversation maybe 15 years ago or something like that. And basically the thread of the conversation was, not necessarily home defense, but out in the community somewhere. Like what's the priority list? What do we do? And I was really actually kind of surprised because I was, a martial artist and enthusiastic martial artist. And how that mindset is, right? And I'm like, okay, this guy right here starts, pulls a gun on this, this group of people over here at the restaurant. What do you do? And, at the time, it was a long time ago, but at the time my, thought was, okay, well, you've got a good angle, right? So now you can go, attack from this angle, whatever. He said, well, the first thing I do is get my damn family out the back door, right? Now, after that, if for some reason I think that I want to go back in there and deal with this, we'll talk about that later. But the first thing is get the hell out, get these guys to safety. And the whole, prioritizing your personal, safety, but also your family, you forget that. Like for martial arts, we don't train with that enough. Like we don't put ourselves in those situations. I don't think enough to prioritize, holy crap, get my daughter way the hell over there behind some stone, right? Behind some bricks, before I even think about trying to de-escalate the situation or trying to deal with the situation here, that kind of thing. I think it's pretty well said, on your side, yeah. So if I do want to, sort of augment my curriculum and implement these kind of things, I think your advice earlier is to find expertise, right? Have a good partner in that area is super critical. I've had lots of people at my schools, Tom, as you probably know a bunch of them. I've had lots of people come in for seminars and they forget their role. And I've had some well-known great martial artists who are okay instructors too, will, do a few of their little elements or whatever, and then look at a student and go, hey, who taught you to kick like that? Well, that's bullshit because, okay, right? You've always been really, really good at augmenting, like being a multiplier, have a multiplicative effect on what the martial arts school is doing. You're never diminishing kind of what, what they're teaching their students. And even if you don't agree, right? There's a way to approach that in a proactive, productive way, right? So your first element of advice, I think, is pretty important. You want to find a resource, right? You want to find some external expertise that can help you there. What else should I be thinking about, do you think, in that arena?
Well, first of all, I want to talk about technique. All right. Maybe if you go back in time, way before we were ever thought of, and traditional martial arts, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Philippine, whatever, everybody kicked the same, everybody punched the same, all that. Now martial arts becomes a business. There's some people that just don't have the personal ability or the coordination to be like that top student. A friend of mine told me one time, he says, I'm going to take you to a school. He goes, I want you to look at the black belts. I said, okay. So he took me to this school, famous name brand school, and I watched. And he says, what do you think of the black belts? I said, well, I don't want to give my opinion. He goes, no, seriously. I said, what did they think of the black belts? He said, see, Tom, nobody's good in this school, like high level. So all the black belts look good because they're the same level. He says the exceptional ones are the black belt team that they strive for. And I got what he was saying.
Right.
He didn't talk about perfection. The school talked about being a good person, about going get educated, being an asset to society. So I agree with that. Now, when I came off operative mentality, working overseas and all, you probably couldn't talk to me like that. But when I had a gun, I got it. So if people are going to enhance personal protection, because if we go back in time, go back to the 90s, there was no personal protection. All right. When we came on the scene of talking about personal safety, personal protection, we were laughed at. What's that? Combat this. Nobody's laughing anymore because personal protection doesn't compete with your students. It enhances your students to the people that are smart like that. So to get their skills of readability more and understanding how to de-escalate a situation and really get them to talk about, how not to enter into personal space, because the pandemic changed personal space forever.
Right.
Forever.
6 feet.
Yeah, you get too close, people get antsy. So there's things you could do. And also, if they bring in speakers, they bring in trainers and all that. And I know exactly what you say, because I've been in many, many seminars where we would teach. And I always open my seminar like this. Do you want me to be politically correct, or you want me to be me? And everybody screams, be you, And the thing is, when people make fun of somebody that can't kick high or doesn't have the right punch or all that, that doesn't do good for the after effect to the head of the school that he's got to deal with and say, well, you brought in so-and-so, he's a legend, but he made fun of me. So people got to get on the same page. Whoever you bring in to enhance your program, they got to enhance you. And there's very few people that do that. But back to the school. So the school world, the big thing is the martial art world can help today's volatile world. They can. And they could do it in a proactive way. And they can teach people about readability. They could teach them about personal space. They could teach them being aware of what type of clothing on what day doesn't work. How do people brandish a weapon? Listen, these guys are not wearing holsters that are inside. They're wearing holsters that are outside. All right. You saw that guy in New York, carrying a full long gun going through the streets. I'm saying to myself, and nobody saw that.
And nobody stopped it. Yeah. What the? Yeah.
What was the movie Heat? I mean, what do they think they were filming? So, but there's the other part of society that wants nothing to do with it. They don't want to get involved. They look left. There's a problem. They run right. And I'm not saying they're wrong, because at the end of the day, we have the right to do whatever we want with our bodies. But if schools are going to make a difference, they should get into the Chamber of Commerce, get into the religious groups, get into whatever, and sponsor. If they want to sponsor, a personal safety day, an active shooter day, or whatever, but all on awareness. Because the other thing they're not doing, and I know of a case going on now, is there's a martial arts school that gave tips on active shooter. Lo and behold, there was a situation of an active shooter. All right. And people did what he said, and they got hurt, got killed. And now they're going after his background to say, where did you get this expertise?
Yeah.
And from what I know, and I'm trying to stay on the outside, I don't want to be a expert in this case. He got it off the internet.
Yeah.
But the internet's not all factual, so
yeah,
we got to watch what we offer people.
Yeah, no, 100%. This is not like, again, as I think you said this earlier. There are absolutely, some elements that in lots of organizations you may be able to go, study on a week or something like that, and then maybe have some curriculum that's designed for law enforcement enhanced training or something like that, defensive tactics or whatever the case might be, right? Some, bundle of information that might be useful. But you're dealing with people's lives now. You're dealing with like serious, people trying to attempting to do serious harm to serious people in serious numbers, right? This is non-trivial. It's not something to mess around with. Yeah, I totally get it. A lot of the community outreach activity, things that you were talking about, clearly when you're marketing a martial arts school, clearly there are stories or, just the way sort of the market is thinking about the world that resonate with them. Right. And this is something right now that, again, I'm not going to call it like it's a hot marketing subject. Right. But it's something that's in the lexicon. It's in the, conscious mind of people who are really concerned about their families, and they're concerned about, like you said, their religious institutions and the place that they worship, and these soft targets, these places where people gather together. I've always been mortally afraid of Disney. I've always thought that if I were a jihadi, or if I were somebody who really wanted to make a statement, if I go get in line at Disney, oh my God, with an S-Fest or something, right? Just what a tragedy you could inflict on people, but if this is in the lexicon, and I think we want to approach this in a manner that doesn't instill fear, it doesn't instill panic or anxiety, but awareness, as you're describing, right? How would you maybe, enhance that as we close for the day?
Well, again, I'm going to go back, and I stress this because they're all brothers and sisters of ours in the martial arts. You have to, since the martial arts is 85, 87% children, and those children work themselves up to teens. I know people call them adults, but they're not adults, they're adults. Is the parents got to buy into it. Like, train the parents, or bring in a speaker that the parents want to hear, and do they agree? If they agree, when they're done, have them sign a little sheet. I agree with this. You could go teach my kid. Okay, so now you pass the word. All right, because if you teach through fear, then when this, God forbid, happens, whether it be a pedophile-based thing, an active shooter, or whatever, people will freeze like a deer in headlights. So you have to go, usually we go bottom to top. We got to go top to bottom, and the top being the parents, and come on down.
Yeah.
And cover yourself. We all have liabilities, and we have to worry about that. But my biggest fear is me ever giving wrong advice to somebody and they die because of my statements.
Yeah.
So I am not an expert at a lot of things, but what I am and what I know, I'm an expert in. I say the world's a big hotel. I only have one room. That's it. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally get it. Super useful, Tom. We really appreciate it again. In this highly toxic, polarized political world we live in, where every damn thing you say online, or, God forbid you ever hold up a sign, half the country hates you, immediately without even hearing your side of the story. The temperature certainly seems to be pretty high right now. And I definitely think it's an area. I'm not going to say that it's an area of opportunity for us to go leverage against marketing, although it might be. What I'm really saying is this is an area, as you just described a minute ago, this is an area where we can contribute to society in some way, some positive way, right? How can we use, our reach into the community and our influence with parents and elementary school teachers and principals and guidance counselors and, small business owners just like us all around our community? How can we use that leverage and that influence to really help make the world a better place, to help make our community safer and more aware and these types of things? So I think what you're describing is incredibly useful and valuable for folks. You've always been like an on-call resource for so many people in the industry. If they need help, if they need advice, if they need, resources or strategies to go bring these messages to the local community and stuff like that. What would be the best way for people to reach out to you if they have questions, or if they maybe want you to come in and do something with them, or whatever the case might be? What's the best way to make a connection there that might be useful for them?
Most people get me through my email, tompatire@tompatire.com, or my cell is always open, 201-400-6559. I just dealt with a guy in Michigan today, and he said to me, he goes, "I can't believe how approachable you are." I go, "Listen, I put on my pants the same way you do." But I would like to end with a statement that I learned from meeting Charlie. He says, in order to get people to buy into who and what you are, he goes, you match your fact with their fiction. And I believe that 100% now.
That's interesting. Truthfully, that's something I've always respected a lot. With Charlie, also, I mean, a number of people on the other side of this political spectrum as well. But like one of the things I thought that was very useful is you have a fact and you have the truth, and not always the same thing, right?
Great.
Just because you have a fact doesn't mean that's the full comprehensive story. I would much rather it's more like the court of law, where it's the truth, the whole truth, not just the cherry picked fact, and nothing but the truth, right? So I like that a lot. I think that's pretty useful for people. Once again, thank you so much again, sir. We really appreciate it. Thanks for everybody for watching. Again, if there's anything Tom can do to help you, he's always been like an incredibly valuable and resourceful resource for the martial arts community for, I don't know, 30 years, something like that, maybe more now. And I can't tell you the number of people that I know personally who've worked with Tom and who had Tom come and do, things with their students and their families and their communities that have, nothing but great things to say about that. So feel free to reach out and reach out to me, reach out to us here at Atlas Martial Arts Software, at Martial Arts Industry Innovations, and we can, make a connection or help you with any of those things. So thanks everybody so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you again, sir.
This has been a Martial Arts Industry Innovations production, presented by Martial Arts World News Magazine.